Hi, this is Marty Westcott with Intermountain Lacrosse, and welcome to the Fall 2018 Coaches Meeting. Appreciate you taking the time to go through this presentation, as the information in the presentation you are responsible for as a coach. If you have any further questions or comments or feedback, feel free to contact me directly at marty@imlacsutah.org. And we'll go ahead and get this started and keep it as short as we can. So just a brief introduction to Intermountain Lacrosse. If you are new to Intermountain Lacrosse or the game of lacrosse, we are the umbrella league for all youth lacrosse in the state of Utah, and our objectives are to grow the player, grow the league, and grow the game. We want to become the model for lacrosse across the country, and we are dedicated to promotion, development, and administration of both boys and girls youth lacrosse in Utah. We do run high school lacrosse as well in the fall and during the winter, but our main objective and our main responsibility is that of boys and girls youth lacrosse. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we are generally volunteer run. We do have 5 staff members in the office. We have an executive board of 7 members. And we have a general counsel, which is represented by every program in the state. But the majority of the people who run lacrosse are volunteers. You coaches, program directors, parents who are willing to put in time, and we appreciate your willingness to do so. Sorry, as I flip around here, trying to get the right screen. There we go. Okay, so let's start off with practices. Practices are your responsibility to coordinate. Your program is responsible to find locations, and we would ask that you get in touch with players if you haven't to get those practices going. All players and coaches at practice must be registered with U.S. Lacrosse. So as a coach, you've got to have that current U.S. Lacrosse membership. We as a league provide memberships and pay for the memberships for you. Just when you register as a coach, we submit those membership requests to U.S. Lacrosse directly. So you don't have to go through that process. We'll do it for you, and we'll pay for those memberships as well. Head coaches must be U.S. Lacrosse Level 1 certified. So what that means is any coach that is acting as a head coach must have that Level 1 certification. We understand that every year we have new coaches or people that are new to the game or new to coaching, but that's a process that you need to go through as quickly as possible. We have trainings and certification workshops that go on throughout the year. And so go ahead and check on our website for those. You should also get notifications for those workshops as a registered coach. Please be sure to check your rosters online and make sure that the players that are attending your practices are all on your roster. And if for some reason they're not, make sure that we get that corrected. All rosters are going to be available to view and posted online. So other teams and anybody throughout the league could actually see those. So let's just make sure that we have those correct before the first game, which is this Saturday. For grades 5 through 8, you may have up to 3 practices a week for a maximum of 2 hours per session. Grades K through 4, you can have a maximum of 2 practices per week for a maximum of 1.5 hours, an hour and a half per session. Just a note on practice time. I've coached a lot of different levels, and in coaching 12 years of high school, I never had a practice that was over an hour and a half. Keep in mind that kids have a shorter attention span, and that part of your practice should be keeping them as active as possible for the whole practice. And so I kind of give the recommendation to try to do more with less and keep everybody active and engaged. During a shorter period of time, your practices will likely be more productive that way. So just a little coaching advice. Games, during the fall season, you have 5 games per team. All games will be played on Saturdays. We do not have any weekday games in the fall unless we have some extreme situations where we have to make up games. Then we do have a bye week built in there for that. But in the rare occasion, we may have to play a game on a weekday. But during the fall, 5 games over the course of 6 weeks. In September, last games on October 13th. Approximate game times are going to be between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. The boys grades 5 through 8, we allow an hour and 15-minute game slot, and for the younger ages, an hour and 45 minutes. That's not 100% the case in the fall. If we have high school games going on in the same field, you may only have an hour game slot for the older grades. Basically, what we need you to do is get on and off the field quickly. You need to understand there is no built-in warm-up time on the field. So there is not time to warm up your goalie. There is not time to go and do throwing and catching and 4v4 and whatever drills you do before a game regularly. There is not that time built in. So get there early enough to do your warm-ups and be ready to jump on the field as quickly as possible when your game time is allotted so that we don't get behind. Game day management. So if you are hosting games at a field that your program is responsible for, the host is responsible for game day management, which includes setup, takedown, cleanup, those types of things to make sure that the field is ready for play. The league does provide painting services for games. So we run the schedule. We run it through our painter. He has a schedule each week to make sure that the game fields are painted, and we take care of that. We don't provide any painting for your practice fields, etc. For games, coaches will record the scores in the system, and as we'll note later, the K through 2, we do not keep score, and so we don't want those scores recorded in the system. But otherwise, coaches, you can go in there and record the scores of each game. And each coach should have a league-issued ID badge on the sideline. If not, you will be reported to us by the table people, and we'll get with you and find out why you're not wearing your badge. The badge indicates that a coach has been background checked and has registered with the league. If you are not background checked or registered with the league, you need to get so quickly, and you're not allowed to have other people on the sideline who have not gone through that process. We just want to note a couple of differences between the fall and the spring. The spring is a longer season. We have 8 games. We have playoffs, and overtimes are played in the case of a tie. You have one timeout per half, and we actually have multiple divisions in the age groups for 7th and 8th grade and 5th and 6th grade. In the fall season, we have approximately about 55%, close to 60% of the numbers that we have in the spring. And so we just don't have the ability to run the same kind of season. Plus, we lose weather very quickly here in the fall. So we offer a 5-game season. There is no postseason. There are no overtimes. Games that end in a tie or end in a tie. You have 1 timeout per game per team. So only 1 timeout per game. And then the only division at which we have multiple divisions is 7th and 8th grade. So we have an A and B in the 7th and 8th grade, and then a 5th and 6th division, 3rd and 4th division, and the K through 2 division. You'll see some changes with divisions in the spring, but more news about that will be coming in the coming months. Rosters and team splits. We need rosters. I'm sorry, the team splits were due August 20th, so that helps us do the schedule. And we just ask that you use the data that we have, enter the teams and the levels, and all the data in terms of player rosters and things like that should be locked up by September 7th, which is the day before first games. And if you have any questions about that, you can let us know, but you should be able to get all that information entered in before the first game. The divisions for the fall, as I mentioned, we have a 7th and 8th grade A division, which really constitutes the top to middle level of 7th and 8th graders. You have a 7th and 8th grade B division, which is the middle level to the lower or beginning level 7th and 8th graders. There's 1 division for 5th and 6th grades. If you have multiple teams at that age group, you should split those teams equally in terms of competitiveness. They should be split equally. Third and fourth grade, the same thing, one division. If you have multiple teams, they should be split equally in terms of competitive nature. And K through 2, the same thing. Try to make them as competitively equal as possible if you have multiple teams. The B divisions are for the newer and developing players. We do encourage all programs to push players up to a higher level where appropriate. We've seen that player development can increase faster when they're playing against a higher level. It tends to challenge the player and can help them move along quicker. As I mentioned, if a program has multiple teams, they must be divided in equal manner. And in order to accommodate the creation of teams with appropriate number of players, the league will allow variances for 6th graders to play in the 7th and 8th grade division and 4th graders to play in the 5th and 6th division. But you must notify the league and get these variances approved by the league. If you have any questions about divisions for the fall, feel free to let us know. Most of this has been taken care of already, as we've had many discussions with the programs. But if you have questions about that, please let us know. In terms of supplies, most programs provide their own jerseys, but if you're getting jerseys from IMLAX, please let us know and you can come pick those up. We provide 4 dozen balls per team at the 5th through 8th grade level and 3 dozen balls per team at the K through 2 levels. K through 4 levels. Those balls are generally picked up. We'd like to have them picked up by one person for the whole program. So before you come and pick up balls, make sure that somebody else in your program didn't already come and pick those up. We also have team gear that's donated to you through IMLAX, and that's goalie gear and K through 2 goals. So the goalie gear is a chest pad, throat guard, and stick, and that should have been provided to your programs in the spring. The only reason you would need a set of goalie gear, in theory, for the fall would be if you have a new team where you didn't sponsor a team in the spring or a piece of equipment was broken. But otherwise, every team should have the goalie gear that they require. The K2 goals, kind of the same thing. We provided those new in the spring. They're metal rage cage goals. If you did not sponsor a K2 team in the spring and you need a goal, please let us know. We can get that to you. If you have a need for player scholarships, please let us know at info@imlax.org, or you can go ahead and actually fill out the information on the website, and we can get that to you. But if you'll email us, we can get you information about that. Each head coach is provided a scholarship, and you can get a coupon code from your program administrator to get your player fees refunded if you need. A couple of important policy reminders that you need to keep in mind. One, all coaches need to be registered and pass a background check in order to coach. Again, we don't want people on the sideline that have not been registered and background checked. Players must play for the team within their high school boundaries where they currently live. This has always been the rule, but I think at times has not necessarily been enforced. And so we try to make sure that all the players are playing for the right area. This is not an open scenario where you can go play wherever you want. Players should be playing in the high school boundaries in which they live. Now, we do have scenarios and circumstances where we have teams that are combined in certain areas based on the number of players in those teams, based on the administrative needs of those teams. Sometimes we do have combined teams, and those are designed and organized by the league. So if you have questions about that, you can feel free to contact us. Players cannot play up into the league above their age group without successful completion of the variance form. So again, if you are jumping from the 6th grade to the 7th and 8th grade level, you must fill out that variance form. Generally, if the form is signed by the parent, coach, and program director, generally we're going to approve that. It's more a notification for us that you all are in agreement that that's okay and it's approved. Then generally those are going to be approved. Your players cannot play on multiple teams, and if your program fields 2 teams or more, they can't play on both teams. We've had too many scenarios over the course of the last couple of years where players are playing on multiple teams. It's not fair to the other players on that team. It's not fair to the competition that you're playing, and people tend to take advantage of that when it's been allowed in the past. So we just, as a general rule, say you cannot play on multiple teams. we can't accommodate scheduling requests. The schedule is pretty much done, but just for future reference, we really don't want coaches coaching multiple teams. We need to make every effort to get more coaches involved, get more people helping out, so that we don't have coaches coaching multiple teams. The league is not going to cancel games except for weather, which we'll talk about. And so if you need to cancel a game or change a game, you need to go to that opponent and talk with them about options. And you also need to get the league to consent, because we need to reschedule fields and officials and everything else. So you can't cancel a game without letting us know and without letting the opponent know what's going on. If you have any other changes or need to contact us for any reason, our emails are right there for Colin and I, and we're happy to answer any other questions that you might have. More policies. We have a concussion policy at Intermountain Lacrosse, which basically says if a player shows symptoms of concussion and has been removed from a game or practice, they are not allowed to participate in lacrosse until they have been medically cleared. So there's a couple pieces to that. One, we have a reporting form on our website that coaches are required to fill out if they know that a player has been concussed. So if you take a player out of practice because he's been concussed, or a player is concussed during a game, you as a coach are required to fill out this form. Now, at that point, the league will take over communicating with the parents and the player to determine return to play. So once we receive those forms, then we will communicate and reach out to the parents, talk to them about getting medically cleared before they can return to play. And then once they have been medically cleared, they'll let the league know, and the league will reach out and make sure that the coach knows that that player has been cleared. So it is a manual process, but it's something that we need the coaches to do. And so you as a coach have that responsibility. The form, again, is on our website. If you can't find it, let us know. But we need to manage that process and document that process so that we don't have players who have not been cleared and gone through concussion protocol returning to play too early. One of the things that they're finding with concussions is that if a concussion is not properly healed, the chance and risk for concussion is greater. So we want to make sure that those players who are concussed go through the healing process, are fully healed before they return to play. You can read the concussion policy on our website. And you can see kind of how it's stated by law that we must have this policy in place, and we have to have a protocol that we follow. And the protocol, as I've already mentioned, is reporting it to the league. The league will follow up with the family, who will then let us know when they've been medically cleared. So please make sure that you're addressing concussions in a proactive way, and let's not kind of be old school. I know back when I played back in the day, it was, how many fingers am I holding up? And if you can tell them the number of fingers, you're good to go. If a player has any of the symptoms of concussion, you need to be very careful in allowing them to return to a game. You don't want to be that coach that puts a concussed player back in the game. Weather and lightning. Basically, the lightning policy is that if you see a flash and a bang within 30 seconds, the officials will suspend the game. If a game is suspended, 30 minutes, it's going to be a minimum of 30 minutes before they can resume the game. Now, you should work with the officials to make those calls, but it technically is the officials' call to suspend the game. So work with the officials, communicate with them, but technically that is the officials' call to suspend the game. Now, if a game is suspended, okay, if a game is suspended in the second half, that game is complete. Okay, so game suspended in the second half is complete. Okay. If the game is suspended in the first half, we'll try and wait that out and try and get the rest of that game in. Or there may be a requirement to reschedule, which, again, we'll work with all parties to reschedule that game and see what we can do. It is in our policy, just to note, that while we're going to make every effort to reschedule games, there's sometimes when it's just beyond our capacity to do so. We don't control the weather. We don't control the fields. We have to be as accommodating as possible, and so we will try to reschedule every single game that we can, but we can't guarantee that we're going to get every single game rescheduled that is canceled due to weather issues. So if you have questions on that, let us know. The policies, again, for lightning and weather are on our website, and we encourage you to become familiar with them. A couple other notes that we want to make. We want to remind everybody that Intermountain Lacrosse is a recreational lacrosse league. Player development and experience is our primary objective, and we have different levels for development purposes, not for competitive purposes. And we want everybody to keep this in mind, that people play lacrosse and players play lacrosse and parents have their kids play lacrosse for many different reasons. And we want to support everybody's reason for playing. We want everybody to have a good experience. We want to have everybody reach their potential, and that can be a challenge. But that's what we are, is a recreational lacrosse league, and we want to keep that at the forefront. All players should have an equal opportunity to participate. Now, this doesn't say that players have to have an equal time on the field, because that's a difficult measurement in lacrosse, as you have different positions that play different roles. But every player should have equal opportunity to participate, and you should encourage each player to play as much as possible, and you can give them those opportunities to play as much as possible. All these players pay the same amount, and one of the things that we received in feedback from our parents as we did a big survey in the spring was oftentimes they felt that the value they were getting out of lacrosse didn't match the price that they were paying. Players weren't playing enough. They didn't feel like they were advancing enough. They didn't feel like they were included in the team. They didn't feel like the experience was worth what they were paying to play the game. And so we all need to do a better job in encouraging players to do their best, but also giving them every opportunity to do so. So we ask everybody to keep that in mind going forward. We don't ever want to dictate that you play a player a minimum amount of time, but we all need to respect that everybody is participating in this game. They've paid to play this game, and for whatever reason, they want to play. And so let's give them the opportunity to play. This game's supposed to be fun. Let's keep it fun. Let's have some fun. Let's support the players, coaches, officials, and make sure that that's something that we're providing for the players. You can have competition, you can work hard, and you can do all these things and have fun at the same time, and that's what we want to encourage. Now, one thing that we do want to also address, and something that we're working on some policies for, but just we want to note this in general, that any kind of inappropriate conduct or player treatment is absolutely prohibited. And that can mean inappropriate touching. It can mean inappropriate language. It can mean any kind of inappropriate conduct and player treatment. As I said, we're working on some policies to kind of help define that, but hopefully we can do a better job in self-governing ourselves to understand that these are kids. They need to be treated like kids. And while we need to help them reach their potential, we need to do so in a way that is not demeaning or inappropriate in the way that they're touched or spoken to. If you have questions on that, feel free to contact us so we can speak more about it. But in today's day and age, you definitely don't want to put yourselves in situations that are compromising. One question that we've had lately is about air quality. We've had a lot of fires lately, things like that. In terms of will we play, yes, we will play. If we have poor air quality, we're going to plan to play. Now, as parents, we encourage you and coaches to make the best decision for individual players. If you have players that have sensitivities or asthma or those types of things, then maybe they should not play on those days. Or if it's possible to have some sort of breathing apparatus or breathing protection, maybe they should use it on those days. But we will play and leave it up to the individual parents and coaches to make the best decision for their player in terms of air quality, and we ask that everybody make those decisions wisely. The schedules have been released, and so we won't talk about that necessarily, but we'll talk about rules. It is your responsibility to teach the players the rules. As the coach, you need to be responsible to teach the players the rules of lacrosse. So make sure that you understand the rules, and make sure that you're teaching those rules during practice and during games. If you need to, bring the rules matrix to all games for reference. We'll send this out prior to the first week of games, And it's a matrix that helps you identify the rules based on age and based on any modifications that IMLACS has made to the rules. We generally use the rules straight from the U.S. lacrosse guidelines. However, there are a few minor alterations we've made to the rules to help either logistically or things that make more sense for us. And so those are all noted in this matrix. If you take that matrix to the game, you can discuss it with the official before the game, just make sure that everybody's clear. But if there's ever any question, it's a tool that can be used to help manage the game. Now, one thing I'll say, and I'll probably talk about this a little bit later, but you definitely don't want to pull that out in a defensive way as you're communicating with officials. Do it beforehand, talk about it beforehand, but if an official makes a call that you feel is wrong, to pull out the rule book and throw it in their face is probably not going to be received very well. So do it in a respectful way, communicate with the officials in a respectful way. If it's something that they're unaware of or a mistake is made, do it in a very respectful way. If it's done that way, most officials will hopefully respond in a positive way. The K through 4 coaches also need to know that the Lacrosse Athlete Development Model rules, the LADM, rules, guidelines, and field diagrams. They are different, they're new. The overriding objective of lacrosse in kindergarten through 4th grade is to develop players. So we want to teach them the rules, we want to teach them the fundamentals, we want to teach them about how to run up and down the field. And so please understand those rules so that you can teach those to your players as well. And let's make sure that the overriding objective in K through 4 is to get as many kids, as many opportunities as possible. A couple of rule changes in 2018. These were new in the spring, but just a couple of things to remind you of. A goal is counted as long as the ball has been released from the stick prior to the whistle blowing at the end of a period. Contact of any degree made to an opponent's head while actively making a stick check is a slashing penalty. Spectators, in addition to players and coaches and team personnel, can also cause a time-serving unsportsmanlike penalty. So if you have parents that are all over the officials can call an unsportsmanlike penalty, and your in-home would serve it. And then there's a couple other rules there that you can look at as well. And then keep in mind we are using all the new stick head specifications. So in 2018, new rules for the shape and sizes of the stick head came out and are currently being used. The potential to have a referee stick check is there. Hopefully that's not abused, but we do want players using appropriate sticks in the game. Just a couple of points of emphasis and review. We want to review some of the personal fouls that we see quite a bit, and we've provided some definitions. I won't go through them in detail, but slashing is something that we hear about all the time in terms of an official didn't call it, or a coach is teaching their players to slash. And I do believe that in most regards, it's just young players not understanding how to actually check properly. And we're constantly working with the officials to make sure that we encourage them to call slashing penalties in abundance. So please note those rules. I guess I'll note the last one, which is a one-handed check, no matter what, is considered a slash. And you'll see it says whether or not it makes contact with the opposing player. So a slash can be called on a one-handed stick check, even if it doesn't touch anybody. So just make sure that you understand those rules and that you're teaching them from a coaching perspective, that you're teaching the right way to check and not slashing. A cross check, you can see there the definition of that. That's something that's being watched. Anything involving the neck or head, so any kind of initiation of contact to the opponent's head or neck area, if it's excessive or violent or uncontrolled, those are things that the official is trying to call. And that includes an offensive player. If an offensive player is trying to lead with his head in, like a running back would or something like that, those are also things that the officials are looking for. Illegal body checks, some of the notes around that. if somebody is not within the 3 yards of the loose ball, if it's from the rear or below the waist or above the shoulders, if an opponent has any part of his body leave the ground, okay? If a body check is targeted against a player that's defenseless, or anything that's excessive, where the player lowers his head or shoulder and has the intent to put the other player on the ground. Those are illegal body checks. And again, those are something from a coaching perspective that we need to make sure that we're coaching properly. Again, we're working with the officials to make sure that they're calling those. But as coaches, my firm belief is that you have a greater control over the actions of your players than the officials do. So if you'll teach it properly, if you're holding people accountable, if you don't allow players to break the rules or use poor technique, then the game will get safer and it'll get better. A couple other points of emphasis: sportsmanship. We want to make sure that players, coaches, and officials are exhibiting the highest levels of sportsmanship. You'll note there, U.S. Lacrosse expects officials to enforce the unsportsmanlike conduct rules without hesitation. So you may see going forward quicker whistles. You may see more stiffer penalties. A couple of things you need to note: nobody other than the head coach is allowed to address the official. Okay, and if you're a head coach and you're trying to get explanation on everything all the time, it's very difficult for an official to officiate the game. If you've got some questions, try to do it in the downtime. Let's not overreact to things that don't really matter or that don't have any consequence on the game. Let's keep our focus on safety and the important parts of the game. Again, stick checks to the head, we kind of talked about. Mouth guards was changed from a foul to a technical, and the idea is to enforce penalties. And so instead of it being a personal foul, it's a technical foul, so that what was happening is the officials weren't penalizing people because they felt that it was a pretty harsh penalty. So now it's a technical foul if you have that mouth guard out, which is a 30-second foul. Again, understand the age-appropriate rules. Each age, 7th and 8th, 5, 6, they all have different body contact rules, stick sizes, field sizes, things like that. Make sure that you're familiar with that. We're not really using any experimental rules, but at times we might. So those are things that are in the U.S. Lacrosse guidelines that are points of emphasis for 2018. We've mentioned the Lacrosse Athlete Development Model, the LADM model. This is for grades K through 4, and you can see the guidelines for those age groups noted here. In K through 4, it's a 4 versus 4, no goalies, small goal, 8 to 12 players on a team. And the main point of emphasis that we want to make that we've seen over the last year and a half is that it is not allowed for a player to stand in the crease and act as a goalie. So a player cannot and should not hang back in the defensive end and act as a goalie. The idea is you want your players moving up and down the field. You want your players passing the ball. You want your players moving the ball around and experimenting. It's really not appropriate to have one player take the ball and run all the way down on an empty goal and score. The idea is, again, developing that passing and catching and those kinds of things. You can see the field dimensions, the game times. We moved from 8 to 10, so it's a 10-minute running quarters. Face-offs are only at the beginning and the beginning of quarters, and every other starts. So once a goal is scored, the ball will start at the goal line extended, so right there at the goal line, the team who just scored, who is now the defensive team, needs to go back behind their midfield line to play defense. We added that last year. We found that teams would score, and the team with the ball, a defender would jump him really quick, take the ball away, and then they just turn around and score again. So we wanted to make sure that at least there was an opportunity for the now offensive team to bring the ball down, move the ball around, pass it, those kinds of things. There is no offsides, and we encourage you to kind of do full team substitutions during dead balls as frequently as possible. We're not going to, U.S. Lacrosse guidelines kind of say it should be a penalty. It's not a penalty, but we just want to encourage you to do your substitutions that way. 3rd and 4th grade, we go 7 versus 7. Now, this is something that is a little different than what U.S. Lacrosse recommends. They recommend a 6 versus 6. We just found it a little bit more congruent to use 2 attack, 2 midfielders, 2 defense, and a goalie, and then we added an offside call in there as well. So the 3rd and 4th grade is a little bit different than what U.S. Lacrosse recommends. But we go 7 versus 7 with the goalie. You can see the field dimensions. Game times are 10 minutes. Face-offs are standard, and we do have an offsides call, so you have to keep 2 on your offensive half, 3 on your defensive half. Again, the idea, move the ball around, giving players space, lots of touches, passing and catching. It just it's not as productive to have one player run through 4 guys and score a goal. We recommend that you move the ball, pass and catch, so that they can get those basic skills that they're going to need when they go to the higher age groups. You can go to the U.S. Lacrosse mobile app, and there's tons of practice plans, drill diagrams. We as a league haven't done a lot of that because U.S. Lacrosse has done a lot of that for us. There's a lot of coaching information at U.S. Lacrosse. You can also go all over the internet and find drills and all kinds of different things that you can use to help these players develop. So officials, we do want to have a couple of things happen going forward, and we're noticing this hasn't been happening, so coaches, you can instigate this as well. But prior to every game, there should be a player certification, and that player certification is the official asking the coach if all of the players are equipped by rule, meaning your players are wearing proper equipment, they have proper sticks, these types of things, they're wearing mouth guards. And if you say yes, then you're certifying that your players are all equipped by rule. It's also a good time for you to ask any questions that you may have based on the age that you're playing. These officials could be officiating up to 6 different sets of rules on a given day based on if they were doing a high school or 7th and 8th grade or K2 or whatever. They could be doing different rules for every game. So it's not a bad idea just to clarify with an official before the game how they're going to call the game. It's also a good time to just, introduce yourself, find out who they are, talk to the officials as humans and not as some sort of person who's trying to make your experience less than optimal. We also want to do a lineup before each game, which is players face each other, the goalies shake hands, and then all the players shake hands. If you've been to a college game or a high school game, they do this before every game. We want to encourage teams and officials to be doing this in the pregame as well. We feel like this will help clarify some things before a game starts, and it will also kind of help with sportsmanship as everybody shakes hands and gets ready to go. In your interactions with officials, again, I've mentioned this, but we want to make sure that head coaches only are talking with the officials. Your assistant coaches are not allowed to address the official by rule. That's a U.S. Lacrosse rule. So if they are, they risk getting a penalty. Please let them know that. If they have concerns, they can talk to you and you can talk to the official. Coaches are not allowed on the field without acknowledgement from the official. So you're not allowed on the field during halftime, during timeouts, anytime. Your team needs to come over to you. You need to stay in the box. You're not allowed on the field. And if a player's hurt, just address the official, make sure that he knows you're going to come on the field, and then you can go on the field. We ask that you be respectful with the officials. The more professional you act with them, the more professional they're going to act with you. I would request, and we as a league request, that we stop the passive-aggressive comments, the complaints that are, directed at the official but said to an assistant coach or, said in a way that, you can justify what you've said. Let's just have good communication with the officials. Let's talk to them, as you would have somebody talk to you, and understand that they're human, that they're on a different spot on the field than you are. They may have seen something differently than you did, and it's really difficult to put yourself in the spot of the other one. They make mistakes. They're trying their best, and I would say for the most part, there are no axes to grind. They're trying to do the best that they can, and so we need to respect that, work with them as best we can, and I encourage you to do everything you can to make that a more positive interaction. A couple of things here just to note. If an official feels like a game has gotten to the point where the acts of aggression or excessively rough play, kind of warrant terminating the game, they can terminate the game. So that's the rule there. We've noted it. If a game is terminated, that's what's going to happen. But if we ever get to that point, there's going to be other issues. So let's make sure that we don't get to that. But I just want you to know that that's a tool that the officials have to stop things from escalating. If you have a specific incident with an official that you would like us to address, we do have a form on the website where you can send us some feedback about how we can take that back to the officials. We will take all that feedback back to the officials and talk to them about it. We want to use it to educate. We want to use it to help us be better. We want the officials to be better. And so if you can be specific in your feedback, it helps us give specific feedback as well. If you have video of an event, we'll take that as well, and then we can use that again for learning and kind of helping make sure that we're doing the best job that we can. One note that we also want to make is ejections, both of players and of coaches, result in an automatic suspension for the following game. So anybody that's an ejected player, coach, and it could be a spectator as well, if you are ejected during a game, you are automatically suspended for the following game. And that's pretty much hard and fast. You are going to have, there's very little room for an appeal there. The only way that we would probably look at something is if a rule was misinterpreted in some way. But we want to stand up and support the officials. If it gets to the point where somebody's ejected, then we've got to pay that penalty. Okay, we had a little disconnection there, so hopefully you caught all that. But again, back to the officials. I was talking about ejections. If there is an ejection, the player, coach, or spectator is ejected automatically for that next game, and you will receive a notice from the league kind of confirming that. So let's just not have those. Let's not put ourselves in those situations. Sportsmanship, again, this is a point of emphasis from U.S. Lacrosse, but be professional with the officials. Be professional with your players. Down here you'll see that your players are watching you. You shouldn't be using foul language with your players, and if we hear situations of foul language, that can result in suspension. We just need to make sure that we're being an example to those players. Be respectful of the table, parents, trainers. We've had situations over the last couple of years where people have been disrespectful to the trainers who are on staff. While we're on that note, let me just comment on that. We have this last spring contracted to have certified athletic trainers at our fields to help diagnose situations and injuries that players that they get during the course of play. So we ask them to assess, we ask them to make recommendation, and we expect that you heed their recommendation. We don't want you to override a trainer. If a trainer is saying, hey, this player should return to play, you really shouldn't be the one telling them they should go back on the field. We've had some parents and coaches kind of give them a hard time, and they're there to help. They're there to do nothing but help and keep these players safe, and so that we ask that you respect their recommendations. If you have if anybody is disrespectful to you as a coach, please let us know that, and we can give that feedback to them as well. But they're just there to help. Other things that we want to note, if you have a fan or a spectator that is particularly rowdy or, being disrespectful or calling out the officials, or worse, we have parents who will call out players of the opposing team. It's your responsibility as a coach to make sure that you take care of that. It's very disheartening and it's very discouraging to hear of parents in some way disparaging a player of another team. I mean, again, these are kids. The maximum age of our kids is 12 or 13 years old in the youth leagues. We just have to do a better job in showing good sportsmanship and be good examples. Again, we appreciate your time, your dedication, and understand that you make an impact in these kids' lives. I look back at my youth and I look back at my time in sports, and my coaches have been some of the greatest influences I've had in my life. And so you have a great influence on these young men, and we ask you to keep that in perspective. You will also receive some additional information via email that we'd like you to review, some more commentary and a couple of the reminders that we'd like you to review going forward as the season starts. We wish you all the best, and thank you for your efforts, and have a great season.